There are recordings that don't exist in history, not because they never existed, but because they were hidden or vanished on their own, as if even they were afraid of the light. An unidentified audio file discovered in Cambridge, the place that once housed the genius of Stephen Hawking, sent chills down the spines of those who found it. No title, no description, just a string of jumbled characters, as if someone was trying to blur it out. But when it was played, no one could mistake that voice. The voice of the man who lived his life paralyzed, yet reached further in thought than anyone else ever had. In that file, he didn't speak of black holes, or the universe, or time. He spoke of consciousness, of the soul, of death, and what might lie beyond that boundary. A man who had publicly declared that death is the end, suddenly, in a private space, revealed thoughts he had never dared to share in public. The question isn't just, why did Hawking change his mind? But rather, why did he have to hide it? And who didn't want us to ever know? You might be thinking, I'm just an ordinary person. What does any of this have to do with me? But pause for a moment and consider. Have you ever felt like you've lived before? Known a place you've never set foot in? Felt a nameless sadness? A memory without a face? What if what you call intuition is actually the trace of a soul's memory? And if that's true, then you're not just listening to a story, you're listening to the missing piece of your own. In an audio recording never officially released, the distinctive voice of Stephen Hawking emerges through faint static distortion, delivering a statement that brought the entire world of physics to a standstill. The soul is not a metaphysical entity. It is an information structure. The man once seen as the emblem of atheism and radical rationalism, in a private and unrestrained moment, revealed an alternative perspective. He did not deny death, but he was no longer certain that death marked the end. In that interview, Hawking stated clearly, consciousness does not reside entirely within the human brain. It is not merely the result of neural electricity or cellular activity. Instead, he envisioned consciousness as a quantum field, a type of informational model not fixed in one place but spread throughout space-time. It exists not because of biological structure, but through resonance with the deepest physical foundations of reality. According to quantum theory, a unit of information cannot be destroyed. When a particle falls into a black hole, its information isn't lost. It's encoded in the surface vibrations of the event horizon. Hawking had once used this very principle to defend his arguments about the universe. But in this recording, he applied it to the human being. If information is immortal, then could memories, emotions, and the innermost spiritual essence of a person also be forms of information? Death, he suggested, is not total annihilation. It is a transformation of the complex information system we call consciousness. Rather than vanishing, consciousness enters another mode of existence, one that cannot be measured by machines, yet still persists in forms science has yet to name, like water evaporating into clouds, like sound still echoing through space after the speaker has gone silent. This view is not alone. Long before the 20th century, many mystical and Eastern philosophical traditions imagined the soul as a wave or a frequency, not an object, but a vibrational state capable of changing, shifting, even merging with other frequencies. When quantum physics emerged, it did not dismiss these ideas. On the contrary, it built a bridge toward them. Hawking, it seems, stepped onto that bridge, though he never fully crossed to the other side. Perhaps he knew the world wasn't ready, or perhaps he, too, was still uncertain. Yet, if you listen closely to the recording, there is a brief moment when he speaks without hesitation. We do not disappear. We change form. Those are not the words of a preacher. They are the words of someone who knew there is something greater than the equations he once wrote. And when we look at the world around us, when we meet eyes that feel strangely familiar, when we sense that we've lived something before, somewhere, we begin to understand. Maybe this is not just a feeling. Maybe it is a signal. Some modern neuroscientists have proposed the hypothesis that memory is not entirely stored in the brain, that it may exist in an open information field, where the brain functions only as a receiver. When someone dies, that field does not disappear, but continues to resonate somewhere in the quantum fabric of space. And when a new life begins, if their frequency is compatible, they may tune into fragments of memory from someone who lived before. This may explain why some young children recount details of lives they never lived. 3-year-olds describing names, addresses, habits, even the cause of death from their previous lives. They are not imagining. They are relaying information. If we are thinking waves of information, then death is no longer the end. It is a pause, a silent rest before the next song begins. But the melody continues, and a part of you, your very essence, continues to echo within it. Hawking never denied that most people would never know this, because information like music only reaches those whose frequencies are attuned to it. Only when you are still enough, empty enough, can you hear it. Have you ever felt as if you were not the first to walk this path? Have you ever wept over a scene that didn't belong to your life? Felt yourself remembering something no one ever told you? Perhaps you are not gone. You are simply remembering, and perhaps you never truly left yourself. In the deepest layers of storage at CERN, buried among millions of data files from particle collision experiments, there exists a sequence of documents that has never been made public, not because they were worthless, but because they were too dangerous to release. The file is marked with an internal code, no title, no research team name, no external annotations. But inside, the first line stops any reader cold. Cognitive Echo Project, Hypothesis, Measurable Quantum Remnants of Consciousness After Clinical Death. In a documented experiment from 2002, a team of physicists and neuroscientists conducted a series of laser spectroscopic measurements at the exact moment a patient's heart and brain ceased functioning. The goal was not to detect signs of residual life. The goal was something else, to locate quantum traces of consciousness, and they found something no one expected. Immediately after the patient was declared clinically dead, the sensors recorded a sequence of oscillating radiation patterns, complex in structure, that lasted over 4 minutes. Unlike any known biological signal, not cellular decay, not machine error, but a repeating energy pattern, like a frequency signature. What they observed could not be explained by conventional biomedical models. They called it the quantum echo, not an echo of sound, but of memory, emotion, and personal structure. It did not emanate from the dying body, but from the quantum field surrounding it, a secondary form of existence, like the shadow of a soul. The Echo Project did not take place in a public facility. It was conducted at a subsidiary site near Geneva, officially labeled as an auxiliary magnetic test lab. But in reality, the location housed undisclosed technologies, light-based neural interfaces, extended brainwave frequency sensors, and devices designed to simulate post-death biological synchronization. Stephen Hawking was not the project's lead, but he was fully aware of every experiment. According to classified files, he had direct exchanges with Dr. Mark Euler, the ECHO team leader, who later vanished without a trace in 2004. Euler once wrote, "If consciousness is a form of information, it will leave a trail, and if that trail can be measured, we are touching something no one has dared to name." Reports from Experiment No. 14 showed the margin of error for the observed phenomenon was 1 in a million. In experimental science, that equates to a truth not yet permitted to be acknowledged. After that experiment, the entire research team was disbanded. The documents were sealed. CERN has never disclosed the ECHO project. In the official record, it never existed. But Hawking's recording, containing eerily matching phrases such as quantum remnants, cognitive structure, and resonance beyond death, confirmed one thing. He wasn't speculating, he had seen it. And that raises an even greater question. If humans can measure the quantum residue of the soul, what happens when we learn how to call it back? A form of immortality, no longer in the hands of religion, but in the hands of physicists, a kind of soul field accessible only to those who understand quantum mechanics. And for that very reason, everything was buried. Because once the soul can be encoded, it can also be manipulated, and wherever consciousness can be controlled, there lies a power greater than nations. Perhaps that's why Hawking remained silent in his final years. Perhaps he knew that some knowledge is only meant for those ready to face themselves. As for the rest, they still need time. Or perhaps they need an echo from beyond what we call death to remember who they are. Not every soul returns, even if information can survive death, even if consciousness is seen as a quantum field that cannot be destroyed. Reality shows us one thing: not everyone carries memory. Not every child recalls a previous life. Not every soul finds its way back into the material world. In documents gathered from the ECHO project, researchers at CERN observed something unusual. Phenomena like consciousness, echoes, quantum activity detected after death occurred in only a tiny fraction of cases. The rest, silence. So silent, it was as if the soul had never existed. Why is there such a difference? The answer, according to Stephen Hawking, lies in what he called the law of compatibility. A soul is not an isolated unit, independent of all conditions. It is a complex, oscillatory pattern, and it can only continue existing if it matches the frequency of the environment it attempts to enter. Much like a radio signal that can only be received by a device tuned to the correct frequency, consciousness after death can only connect again with the material world if the vessel it enters, such as a newborn body, is compatible with its original vibration. This explains why many recorded cases of returning souls involve children with unusually sensitive nervous systems, or who were born under circumstances where the mother was in a state of deep inner peace and spiritual alignment. That compatibility is not just biological. It also reflects the content of the soul's journey. In the final section of Hawking's hidden recording, he emphasizes one point: not every informational pattern is continued. Only those that bring growth or expansion are preserved. In other words, a soul only continues if it still has something to learn, to complete, or to pass on. If that cycle has closed, or if its energy turns incoherent, then the process of rebirth does not occur. This is not punishment. It is a natural selection mechanism of consciousness. Just as in biology, not every cell survives replication. Only those with proper structure are kept to build the new body. If consciousness truly is a living form of information, it is no exception to that rule. In studies on children who recall past lives, scientists have found that many of them carry not only memories, but also clear personality traits from their previous existence: an academic inclination, an unexplainable fear, a remarkable talent in music, mathematics, or memory, a sense of mission they cannot yet articulate. All of it suggests the return is not random. It is a stream, selectively guided. So the real question becomes, who chooses, or more precisely, what chooses? One hypothesis proposes that this selection is made by a unified quantum field, a field in which souls are not evaluated by morality, but by compatibility with the greater evolutionary flow of humanity. If a soul once caused suffering, but has learned from it and seeks to repair it, it may return to complete the act of redemption. Conversely, a soul that only repeats ignorance, resists evolution, or simply dissolves after death may no longer persist in a form we can perceive. Another way to imagine it: picture a forest after a massive fire. Not every seed will sprout. Only those that endured the heat, landed in the right soil, with enough light and water, only they begin new life. And from that, a new forest rises, carrying the DNA of the old, but forming a higher version. In the same way, the soul's return is not merely reincarnation. It is a complex reassembly of information, based on three essential factors: an unfulfilled purpose, a compatible frequency, an opportunity for continued growth. Without one of the three, the process will not take place. Perhaps that's why we sometimes look at someone and feel they don't quite belong to this world, not because they're lost, but because they carry a different code, a soul that has returned not to repeat, but to complete an unfinished cycle. And perhaps that someone is you. If you've ever felt that you are here not just to live, but to do something you cannot yet name. If you've ever dreamed in a language you've never learned, or felt a deep emotional pull toward a culture, an era, or a land you've never stepped foot in, then maybe you are not a beginner. Maybe you are a returner. Not everyone comes back, but those who do carry something, a fragment of wisdom, a lesson, a promise not yet fulfilled, and all of them are trying to complete the final cycle before returning to a place where no return is needed. A 6-year-old boy in Germany who had never touched a piano sat down and played Bach's Prelude in C minor with both hands without missing a single note. A little girl in Japan, just learning how to speak, pronounced complex scientific terms from quantum mechanics, terms her parents had never heard before. A child in the United States, during a mild fever, whispered to his mother, "I come from a place with no sound, and I must finish my work before I forget why I came." All of these cases share one thing in common. They don't just remember, they carry something, a mission, not like the fairy tales of heroes sent to save the world. No need for light, weapons, or triumph. This mission is quieter, deeper, and sometimes it's simply presence. In the records of the ECHO project at CERN, after analyzing over 80 cases of consciousness reintegration into newborn bodies, researchers found that most of these children not only carried memories, but also behavioral inclinations far beyond their age. A 5-year-old boy firmly declared, "We must not cut the forest trees feel pain like we do." A 4-year-old girl repeatedly asked her mother, "When will I see the one I promised to protect again?" A 13-year-old boy claimed he had failed to stop a war last time, and this time he must not stand by. If these were only products of imagination, the coincidences would be too perfect. And if not, then perhaps we are witnessing a generation of returning souls, carrying unfulfilled mission codes. This concept is not unfamiliar to ancient philosophies. In Vedanta, the soul carries dharma, a sacred task to fulfill in one lifetime. In Kabbalah, it's called tikkun, the part of the soul that must be repaired from past life errors. The Hopi people of North America believe that certain souls are called back when the world's balance tips into danger. Stephen Hawking, however, gave it a simpler name: the evolutionary function. According to a banned recording, Hawking believed that only souls capable of contributing to humanity's next evolutionary step are preserved in the cycle of reincarnation, and when the world faces crises, medical, environmental, societal, or spiritual, certain compatible consciousness patterns are summoned back to help redirect the flow of history. But unlike in films, these souls do not return armed with superpowers. They carry emotional memory, heightened intuition, and an innate moral compass. They don't act on command. They act from an inner pull, as if something long forgotten is waiting to be found. In a collaborative study between Dr. Harding's team and the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, scientists found that nearly 70% of children showing signs of past life memory also showed strong tendencies to protect others, react intensely to injustice, and ask profound questions about existence. They often feel different without knowing why. They don't live for competition. They live for something sacred, even if they can't put it into words. And the astonishing part is, adult viewers especially, women who encounter such children often feel something deeply familiar, as if they were once one of them, or still are. Not everyone carries clear memories, but many, especially after turning 40, begin to feel something that modern psychology has no name for: a silent inner call, a pull away from the routines of daily life, a sense that I'm meant to do something even if they don't yet know what it is. For mature women, this feeling often coincides with inner transformation. After raising children, after loss, after illness, after a quiet crisis, suddenly they feel the need to return to something deeper than a name, themselves. If the soul truly carries a mission, then perhaps you, too, signed a soul contract before arriving here, a promise not voiced aloud, but echoed through dreams, through stillness, and through that aching feeling when you witness injustice and can do nothing. Maybe you don't need to do something grand. Maybe you just need to remember, reconnect, and live according to your own code. The children with past life memories are not alone. They are waiting for the adults to listen. They are waiting for the mothers, the sisters, the women who've endured loss, who've been silent too long, to finally open the door, not just to guide the children, but to realize that they, too, are returning, not to start over, but to finish what was left undone. There is a strange kind of sorrow that no one can explain. It doesn't come from present loss. It's not tied to family, work, or life circumstances. It's like a thin mist seeping into every thought, every quiet moment, making you feel as though you've lost something incredibly precious. Even if you have no idea what it is, if you've ever felt that way, you may be carrying an ancient echo, a whisper from a previous life, where a part of your soul left something unfinished. Soul memory doesn't always return like a clear movie reel. It doesn't need to be a past life image or a name from history. More often, it appears as intuition, an unnamed longing, or a deep inner feeling that you don't quite belong here. Many people think they're too sensitive, but in truth, that may be the first sign your soul has journeyed before and is still quietly reminding you. Here are some subtle yet powerful signs often found in people who carry soul memory. 1. You feel a sense of déjà vu in places you've never been. You visit a city for the first time, yet every corner feels familiar. You see an old photo or ancient ruin and feel as if you've touched it before. No one says it's logical, but your heart whispers, I've lived here. 2. You're deeply drawn to a specific culture, language, or historical era without any clear reason. You feel a profound connection to ancient Egypt, Edo-era Japan, or the European Renaissance. You understand symbols, sounds, or clothing styles no one ever taught you. It's not just a preference, it's resonant memory. 3. You have recurring dreams of places that don't exist in this life. Stone streets, wooden houses, golden rice fields beneath a foreign sun. You don't recall the name upon waking, but the feeling lingers in your chest. That was home. My home. 4. You meet someone and instantly feel a deep bond or unexplained caution. A glance that brings you to tears, a stranger who feels like someone you once lost, or a person you instinctively trust. Despite just meeting, science may call it emotional reflex, but spiritually, it may be unfinished soul memory. Fine, you possess innate talents you never formally learned: music, languages, healing abilities, philosophical insight from a young age. They didn't come through training. It's as if they were simply returning. 6. You feel compelled to do something no one else understands: helping strangers, protecting nature, writing a book, though you don't know where to begin. You have no explanation, only an unstoppable pull. It might be a promise you made before returning to this life. 7. You've never believed time is linear. You're not trapped in the present. You live among memories, sensations, and dreams of things that haven't happened, not because you're unstable, but because your consciousness has stretched across dimensions of time. When we're young, these signs are often dismissed as sensitivity, imagination, or abnormality. But as we reach midlife, especially women, these signals begin to return with clarity, because that's when we begin to listen instead of explain. That's when the mind quiets and soul memory finds its voice. You may feel it in a peaceful morning over tea, when light spills through the window, and you remember something that doesn't belong to this life. When you cry over a piece of music you've never heard before, or when you look into someone's eyes and feel as if you found a lost part of yourself. It's not coincidence. It's you, your soul quietly calling your own name. You don't need to remember everything. You just need to honor that feeling as real, because recognition is the first step to reconnecting with the mission you came here to fulfill. Soul memory doesn't ask you to relive the past. It only asks that you live the present fully, carrying the light gathered from every journey before. And if you're reading these words with a quiet stir in your heart, then perhaps you're already beginning to remember. There is a deep silence that only mature women truly understand. It is not the silence of words, but the silence of things felt but never spoken. Intuitions that were never named. Dreams set aside for duty, for family, for life. And within that silence, something miraculous continues to exist quietly. The memory of the soul. In most ancient cultures, women were not just bearers of life. They were the keepers of memory, the holders of all things: unhealed wounds, unbroken curses, unfulfilled dreams from generations past. And through this, they became the gateway through which consciousness returns. Have you ever wondered why your mother often knew something before it happened? Why your grandmother could gaze into the distance and smile, as if she were speaking with someone long gone? Why, when you were pregnant, you not only dreamed of your child, but saw yourself as a little girl being held from behind? Because women do not just carry life in their wombs, they carry the memory field of the soul, not only of themselves, but of the entire lineage. In recent studies on epigenetics, scientists discovered that a grandmother's intense emotions, such as fear, trauma, or deep love, can be passed through DNA to her grandchildren, even if the mother never experienced those emotions. Modern physics calls this cellular memory inheritance, but spiritual traditions have known this for centuries, calling it the matriarchal soul line. This is why many women, after the age of 45, begin to feel a heaviness, even when nothing significant has changed in their outer lives. It is not aging, it is the body and soul beginning to open up and process memories that were never healed, not only their own, but those of their mothers, grandmothers, and the souls that passed through them in other lifetimes. Women are beings of the cycle: birth, loss, rebirth, redemption, understanding, and new beginnings. And at the center of that cycle, they are the thread holders connecting all lifetimes: a mother does not simply give birth to her child. She calls in a soul through emotion, through life energy, through nighttime dreams, and that soul, if it resonates, enters. That is why a grown woman often feels she knew her child before giving birth, not just in a biological sense, but in a deeper one. We've met before, in another form. From this view, a woman is not just a living person. She is a spiritual thread stretched across dimensions of time, a place where old souls return, old lessons are healed, and unfinished chapters of personal history are rewritten. And for this very reason, when women enter menopause, a phase modern society wrongly frames as an ending, they are in fact stepping into their most powerful era, no longer bearing physical life, but beginning to hold the energy of soul resurrection, not through flesh, but through presence, wisdom, and silence. You may be the one your family turns to for guidance, the one everyone trusts, though you never say much, the one who sees what others overlook, the one who hears the sorrow of generations past, though they're no longer here, the one who no longer wants to chase anything, but simply sit still, hold the sacred, and nurture life from within. If that is true of you, then you are not just a woman in the family. You are the sole anchor of the entire timeline. Listen to your intuition. Trust the emotions you can't explain. Write down the dreams that repeat. Name what was lost. And when needed, cry, because your tears are not just yours. They are the release of souls who never had the chance to cry out loud. Women are not strong because they endure. They are strong because they remember. They remember what others forgot. They hold what others dropped. And when they awaken, the wandering souls finally find their way home. For most of modern history, science and mysticism were seen as two irreconcilable worlds, one rooted in logic, evidence, and quantification, the other steeped in intuition, symbols, and invisible connections. One sought to measure the universe with equations. The other viewed the world as a sacred tapestry where everything exists for a deeper reason. But in recent years, that boundary has begun to blur. When quantum physics affirms that a particle can exist in multiple places at once, or that the act of observation can affect an outcome, science is entering terrain. Mysticism has walked for thousands of years. When neuroscience discovers that emotions can alter DNA structure, or that belief can affect physical healing, we are stepping through the doorway between brain and spirit. Perhaps it's not that mysticism is right and science is wrong, but that both are observing the same truth from opposite sides of the mirror. Stephen Hawking once said he didn't believe in the soul in the religious sense, but in a buried recording, he described consciousness as a quantum information pattern capable of existing beyond the physical body, an orderly structure with memory, with a tendency to continue even after death. And that, precisely, is what ancient wisdom traditions have said all along, just in different words, and with symbolic images, not equations. The ancient Egyptians called the soul Ba, a living energy that could leave the body, travel between worlds, and remember. The Greeks called it psyche, not just the mind, but the true essence of a person that lives on after death. The Hindus call it Atman, a drop of the universal soul, returning to physical life to learn, evolve, and reunite. In modern science, it calls it the quantum field, the consciousness waveform, the non-local information structure. But whatever the name, all are reaching toward the same core truth. We are not this body. We are what animates it. And that animating force does not die. It merely changes form. Interestingly, it is women, especially in midlife, who often cross that boundary more effortlessly than anyone else. Not because they understand all the equations, but because they can feel what has no name. They are the natural bridge between mysticism and everyday life. When a mother says, "I know something's wrong with my child," it's not because she has evidence, but because the emotional field between two souls has been activated. When a grandmother sits before an altar, shedding tears without a word, as if in silent tribute to what was never spoken, that is mysticism in action. No need for language, no need for logic, just knowing. And that very knowing, without explanation, is what modern physics is beginning to explore. Studies on collective intention show that when groups focus on positive states like love or forgiveness, the electromagnetic frequencies of the heart and brain begin to synchronize. Masaru Emoto's water experiments revealed that words and even thoughts could affect the molecular structure of water, turning it either beautiful or distorted. Science once laughed at such ideas, but today, it must admit, the physical world is not separate from the unseen. If science is the lamp that illuminates, then mysticism is the feeling that sees with closed eyes. And only when we use both can we truly perceive the nature of the soul. In modern healing practices, more therapies now blend brainwave frequencies, bioenergetics, and meditation methods once dismissed by serious science. In conferences on consciousness, physicists now sit beside spiritual teachers not to debate, but to listen. And in the hearts of women walking life's path through heartbreak, sacrifice, and renewal, a quiet truth is forming. I don't need to choose between logic and spirit. I am the bridge between them. So if you've ever felt like you're living in two worlds, one of numbers and expectations, and another invisible realm you often dream of, know this: you are not alone. You are walking a path where both science and mysticism are converging. You are the connection, no proclamation, no proof needed between what is known and what is felt. And when you begin to live with both arms open, your soul, your wisdom, your love will become the place where truth slowly reveals itself, no longer as a boundary, but as a union, no longer a conflict, but a symphony unfolding. There are moments in life when you pause, in the middle of an ordinary day, amidst the rhythm of work, beneath the noise of the city, and suddenly you feel an inexplicable emptiness inside, not because something is missing, but because it feels like you've lost something from far away, long ago, something no one can name, no one but you. You might call it a midlife crisis, you might call it exhaustion, but the soul calls it something else, a whisper, to return to yourself. You are not the first to hear it, and you will not be the last, because this journey, this return to the soul, has been repeated by humanity like waves crashing against stone. Each lifetime is a wave, each memory a drop of water, and each person like you, a part of the vast ocean we call awakening consciousness. You are not alone. You are the result of every woman who lived before you. You inherit not just genes, but intuition, unspoken dreams, and unnamed fears. You do not walk alone. You are continuing a sacred path. One you may have already walked, under a different name, in a different body, in a different time, but with the same questions. Who am I beneath this shape and skin? Why did I come here? If it all ends in death, these questions are not mere curiosity. They are the gateway through which soul memory reawakens. When you ask, you reactivate a part of the information field that has been sleeping. When you listen to the whisper within, you begin to converse with a self who once existed. And when you choose to live honestly with what you feel, without needing to explain it, you are continuing a cycle passed on to you silently by the souls before you. You may not remember, but the soul remembers. It remembers every time you looked at the sky and quietly asked, "Is anyone listening?" It remembers the nights you dreamed of doors, only to wake and forget what they opened to. It remembers every decision you made that no one understood, but you knew you had to make. That's not coincidence. That's the inner map leading you back. You have been a healer, a keeper, a witness to what was never said. You've known loss, you've left, you've broken promises, and now you've returned, not to start over, but to finish what was left undone. You don't need to write history. You don't have to, because you're healing the timeline simply through your conscious presence. All you need is to live in alignment with what your heart knows to be true, to choose gentleness over correctness, to place a hand over your heart and listen to what no one else can teach you. The voice of the soul. Let this be the last thing you hear today, not as a declaration, but as an invitation. You are not the first to feel lost in this world, and you will not be the last to remember. You were never truly lost. You are simply awakening, slowly, quietly, exactly on soul time. If this speaks to you, stay a little while after the video ends. Turn off the screen, turn off the sound, and listen. In the silence, you might discover something you've known all along, but simply forgot how to name. We've just walked through a journey together, not only with the mind, but with the heart. A journey not meant to give definitive answers, but to open doors that had never been named. If something inside you fell silent while listening, if an image, a sentence, or a feeling stayed with you, then perhaps you have already begun to remember, and that is enough. There is no need to explain it, no need to believe it right away. Just let it stay with you, like a seed. And one day, in a moment entirely your own, it will begin to bloom, not to change you, but to bring you closer to who you truly are. If this journey touched something within you, feel free to leave a comment so others will know they are not alone. If you'd like to continue exploring soul memory, life after death, and the stories waiting to be told between the layers of time, subscribe to the channel, because we've only just begun to touch the first layer. And if you know someone, maybe your mother, your daughter, or a close friend, who's also searching for the quiet whisper within themselves, send them this video as a silent gift, because sometimes the right echo at the right time can call an entire soul home. Thank you for staying with me until the very last moment. I'll see you in the next step.